Everyone, Mythical again here, and today I want to continue to talk about Starfinder 2e classes. So again, if you've watched the other videos, you know that Paizo launched the playtest for Starfinder 2e back at Gen Con 2024 with a target of having it released in 2025 as a full version. So today I want to dive into the Witchwarper. Now this is your spellcasting class, your arcane master, your occult magician, etc. They're basically your space wizards. You know, it took me a couple times to read over this class to really kind of get the feel for it and get the properties figured out for it. It's a little odd to me, but you know, it's a solid class, but probably not one I would be playing as my primary. But let's dive into this and see, you know, what they're all about. Now, again, if you haven't watched my previous videos, especially the first one, which goes into Ancestries, you may want to watch that one just because it will tie in at the end when I talk about the Ancestors. I think would make a really good Witchwarper. Of course, human always being a solid choice just because they have 2 boosts and no flaws. So that one's always just in there anyway, but we'll go and take a look through that. So down below in the description, there'll also be links to the Starfinder playtest, to the archives of Nethys, which you're going to require for any of the basic rules from Pathfinder. They're not reprinted in the Starfinder playtest packet because the book would be too big. You don't really need those rules until the full book comes out. So there'll be a link to that as well. And there'll also be a link to Demiplane Nexus, which has a free character builder for the Starfinder 2e playtest. And that'll be linked down below as well. Now, while you're in that description, you know, clicking on links and stuff to take you to those pages, maybe hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and even click that bell for notifications on new videos. I will be covering more Starfinder games and such as they produce them, etc. We'll be doing that until next year. So we'll hopefully have a lot more information in the next few months on things like starships and other items that are currently not in this playtest. But let's take a look at the Witchwarper. So as you can see, the Witchwarper has its primary key attribute is your intelligence. So again, this is, you know, your equivalent to the Pathfinder wizard. Your initial proficiencies, you're trained in perception, you are trained in fortitude and reflex, and you're an expert in will. That does not really come as a shock. You're trained in 1 skill determined by your paradox. We'll get into that in a bit. And then you're trained in a number of additional skills equal to 3 plus your intelligence modifier. You're trained in simple weapons, trained in unarmed attacks. So no martial weapons, no advanced weapons, unless you get those through other feats. You're trained in light armor and an unarmored defense. So that's really nice to have at least a few options for getting into some armor. Obviously, you're trained in your spell attack modifier and your spell DCs. That kind of goes without saying. Now, one of the big things to talk about is their paradox. Basically, your paradox determines your casting focus. There are 2 arcane and 2 occult paradoxes. So let's take a quick look at them. Okay, so your paradox, basically the way they describe it is your existence is somehow contrary to the status quo of the universe, causing quantum ripples that empower your spellcasting talent and open doorways to other strange worlds. Perhaps you're from an alternate reality or a different timeline, or perhaps you experienced a phenomenon that altered your path. You discovered a time glitching alien device, developed a thesis on quantum magical theory. So at level 1, you select your paradox, which determines your tradition of spells, the additional spells you learn, and also your focus spells as well. And we'll get into that. Now, you do have something called an anchor. So the idea behind it is you have something on you that keeps you grounded into this reality. It could be a physical object, you know, think a fidget spinner or something, memories of your home, loved ones, or even a concept or idea that you obsess over. First level, you selected anchor, and they're presented in the book. You have an ability called Quantum Field. Now, basically what this does is it allows you to manifest a haze in the air that shimmers and basically is a kind of a focus point for certain abilities. A lot of times you have to have this quantum field up and running for most of your feats and abilities to actually work. Not the spells per se, but your feats and abilities. And again, we'll go into that. Now, one of the big things is there is a single action called Warp Reality. So it's your turn and your quantum field isn't active. Basically for 1 action, your quantum field activates and lasts as long as you sustain it, up to 10 minutes or until the end of your next turn. So it's 15-foot radius burst centered on a point you choose with 100 feet. So it's not emanating from you. You can be part of it, but you can have it up to 100 feet away. While your quantum field is active, you can choose actions that have the anchoring trait. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit. Your quantum field's other specific effects are determined by your paradox. Again, which if you're arcane or occult, and we'll look into that in a little bit as well. Your quantum field automatically deactivates if you're knocked out. You dismiss it or you move more than 100 feet away from it. That's a pretty big thing to know about. And one thing about your arcane field, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is if you're using an ability that has the anchoring trait in it, that sustains it for you. So you're not blowing a action every single turn to sustain this thing. That's one of the first things I had to reread to make sure I read it correctly. So whenever you're using something with the anchoring trait, it automatically sustains for you. You do not have to spend an action. So it is something that you can continuously do just by, well, doing the stuff your class is supposed to do. So as a regular caster in Pathfinder, spells such as your cantrips automatically heighten as you go up. And by heightening, it means it does more damage or it has larger effects, and it'll tell you at what spell rank it heightens at. So something like in Pathfinder, let's say Electric Arc, it starts at 2d4. There's no modifier to it. And every time you gain a new spell rank, so you have ranks 1 through 10, technically, you have 1 through 9. So as soon as you're third level and gain access to level rank 2 spells, that spell will heighten and add an extra d4 to it. It's 3d4. And then when you get up to fifth level, and you get third level spells, it'll heighten to 4d4, etc., etc. So that's what heightening spells are. And cantrips and your focus spells automatically heighten as you go. You do not have to heighten them into other spots. When you are spell casting, normally you will have certain spells in certain ranks, and you can learn them heightened in other ranks. So if you want to have your Force Barrage do more damage, you can have it heightened into second or third rank and forego other spells of that rank instead. But I mean, a lot of people will take a Fireball over Force Barrage, but that's just me. Your warp spells are your focus spells. Focus spells are just another category of spell types that you get in addition to your basic spells, so cantrips and your regular spells. And you get a focus pool. You get 1 point per each focus spell you learn. And you don't get them extremely often, but you can have them. Your maximum focus pool is always going to be 3 points. Now, your focus pool, you can refresh the entire works when you take a 10-minute resting activity, exploration activity, and you basically do the refocus. You gain as many points back as you have maximum. So first level, you'll have 1. In one of the games I play, I have a cleric. He has a bard archetype, and he just gained another focus spell. So now he has 2 focus spells in his pool. The focus spells, your focus pool points, you can use on any of your focus spells. So I have 2 for my cleric. He's got 1 from being a cleric and 1 from his bard. So he can actually now in a combat use 2 of either of the spells and burn them out. He doesn't have to use 1 for his cleric focus and 1 for his bard focus. He can just mix and match and choose, and then take a 10-minute break, refocus after that, and get those points back. In Starfinder, for the Witchwarper, they're just called warp spells, but it's the exact same thing. It is a focus spell. So just the terminology is different, but it means the exact same thing. So as you gain levels, you can see the chart there. It shows you how many spell slots you can use per day. Cantrips, you just learn 5. Cantrips mean you can fire them off at will, but you only have 3 slots you get to choose from. Now, the big difference here in the Witchwarper to the Pathfinder Wizard is these guys are more like a sorcerer, because you have spontaneous spells. Now, what a spontaneous spell means is you're going to have a much smaller pool of spells that you know, but you can cast them freely. As in, at first level, you gain 2 first rank spells of your choice and 4 cantrips of your choice, as well as an additional spell and cantrip from your paradox. And we're going to get that. At first level, you have 3 slots. So although you only know 3 spells when you first start, you can pick and choose which ones you want to fire off. In Pathfinder, the wizard sets their spell for the day, and they can only cast those. One of the big things to know is as you want to swap spells, as you gain levels, you can replace ones. Each time you gain a level and learn new spells, you can swap out some of your old spells for different of the same rank. So if you're finding that a certain spell isn't working or you're not using it as often as you think, you can swap it out. That to me is a little more of a detrimental than the Pathfinder Wizard, where you get to choose on your daily preparations which spells you'd like to have. You can have a much wider depth of spells, but obviously, and they're going with more the spontaneous caster. You never know, the Techno Mage, if they bring that back, might be more traditional casting, where you have a book or a pad of spells, a tablet of spells, and then you prep those during your daily preparations. But in this playtest, the Witchwarper is a spontaneous caster. But one of the key terms to know is anchoring, and you can use abilities with the anchoring trait only while your quantum field is activated. If you use the ability on your turn, in addition to the stated effects, they automatically sustain your quantum field. So if you cast a spell and then use an ability that has the anchoring trait in it, it'll automatically sustain your field for you. You do not have to spend the point to do it. Spell shape is the new of meta magic that used to be in Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. That's why they removed it. It's now called spell shape. So when you see that sort of thing coming up as a spell shape, it means it's altering the way your spell works in some way. All right, page 127 is where we get into the paradoxes. Now, again, the paradoxes will tell you what your tradition is. It's going to tell you what skill you're going to be trained in. It's going to give you granted spells. It's going to give you warp spells, and it's going to explain something about your quantum field. So we're going to look at these pretty much in depth because this is the heart and soul of the character. All right, so the first paradox is the Analyst. So there's a hidden code that powers the universe and realms beyond, and somehow you can tap into it by focusing your intellect. You can see the equations. By manipulating probability to suit your strategic needs, you can control the flow of combat just as well as the flow of conversation or strings of digital information. So the spellcasting tradition is arcane. Your paradox skill, so you'll be trained in that, is computers. Your granted spell, so this is going to be one of the spells you automatically learn. Your cantrip is analyze target. At first level, you're going to learn wisp ally. Second level, you'll immediately know sift the sphere. Third, holographic memory. Fourth, etc., etc. So for your warp spells, first level, you're going to learn warp probability. You're going to get your advanced one at 7th level, and that's alternative outcome. And your greater, which shows up at 13th level, is quantum analysis. Your quantum field is you see and understand infinite possibilities and complex theoretical equations as clearly as though they were etched into your surroundings. When you seek or recall knowledge, you can apply the result against 2 related creatures, hazards, unattended objects, and effects in your quantum field. When you sustain your quantum field, you can seek or recall knowledge against an appropriate target in your quantum field as a free action. So this is really important. Recall knowledge is a very important skill in both Pathfinder and Starfinder. This tells you when you recall knowledge, you can find out what are your opponent's weaknesses, what are their worst saving throws, what are their special abilities, and it takes an action. Normally, it's something people do on their third turn, especially if they're in combat and they don't want to take the multiple attack penalty of the third attack. They'll usually recall knowledge. Being able to do this and as a free action on your turn can be invaluable to your team, letting them know that, hey, you know, the person has a bad will save. They have a really low AC. They have a special attack that, you know, your group needs to know. So it's very important to have that one. I really do like the fact that that is a free action. I think that's a very strong ability. The second one is the anomaly. So your existence itself is an anomaly that defies the normal parameters of your current reality. You might have encountered something that disrupted your core existence, or you cross the veil from an alternative reality. You create a bubble of altered reality, projecting elements and other realities into your current universe. So this is another of the arcane traditions. The paradox skill is actually deception. Your granted spells, your cantrip is Eldritch Lance. Your first level spell that you're going to learn automatically is Shifting Surge. Second level, Soul Surge. Third, Void Whispers, etc., as you go all the way up to 9th level and get Call Cosmos. Your warp spells, so initially you're going to get Warp Terrain. At 7th level, you get your advanced World Warp. And at 13th, you're going to get your greater warp spell, which is Parallel Forms. Your quantum field is your movements blur as images of alternate iterations of you flicker around your current form. And your speech echoes with a chorus of otherworldly sounds. Anytime an enemy within the quantum field attempts an action with the concentrate trait, the action is disrupted unless they succeed a DC 5 flat check. So again, that's pretty strong, and you'd be surprised how many times people will fail that flat check. You know, it's only a 20% chance, but 20% chance is better than a 0. All right, our first occult one is called Gap Influence. Now, the Gap, according to the Starfinder wiki, is a recent phenomenon that occurred across the multiverse in which all memories and records of the planet Galarian, which is where Pathfinder is set, were removed from all of the multiverse's inhabitants, along with all memories of an indeterminate number of years. Hence, the Gap. Kind of like the blip in the Marvel universe. So the gap shaped you in some way, whether through enduring study or personal experience. Perhaps you were born during the gap or lived through it thanks to an incredible lifespan, stasis technology, or time travel. You might even be a scholar of the gap who peered back in time and glimpsed a scrambled shred of truth. Whatever the case, it's left you curious to learn more about that mysterious era. So the paradox skill is society. So you're granted spells the cantrip Days, which is in the player core, which you'll have to find on Archives of Nethys. Again, link down in the description. First level, you're going to learn Destruction Protocol. Second, Verdant Code. Third, Discharge, etc., all the way up to ninth, which is Detonate Magic. Your warp spells, your first level one is Warp Present. Your 7th level is the Advanced Forget. And at 13th level, the greater one is Reality Wipe. So the quantum field, supernatural static swirls around you, making thoughts slippery for those unaccustomed to your presence. You are concealed to creatures within your quantum field. When a creature within your quantum field hits you with an attack, you lose its benefit against that creature until the start of your next turn. Concealment is a pretty powerful ability, so that is a really fun thing to be able to drop on a group of bad guys. Now remember, it doesn't stop you from seeing in, and as from reading this, it does not stop your friends from seeing in either. It just stops those in the quantum field from seeing you. So that is a really nice area of effect that you can drop in there. Your quantum field is actually decently large. In a 100-foot range, you can drop it into an area where you know snipers are or whatever, and that will really help you keep from getting hurt often anyway. All right, the final paradox is the precog. So some events have unstuck you in time. You might come from the distant past or far-flung future. Perhaps you've traveled from some forsaken timeline to stop a cataclysmic event. Whatever the reason, you're now gifted with the ability to see and manipulate time in a way that few others comprehend. So again, this is the second occult tradition. Your paradox skill is actually piloting. You're granted spells. Your cantrip is Injury Echo. At first level, you learn Fleet Step. Again, it's going to be anything with an asterisk that you see in this book means it's going to be from the player core rule book for Pathfinder. Again, free on Archives of Nethys if you don't have it. At second level, Instant Virus. Third level, Flash Fire. All the way up to the 9th level, Spell Implosion. Now, your warp spells, your initial one is Warp Time. The advanced at 7th level is Accelerate. And your 13th level one is your Time Loop. So for your quantum field, you have a modicum of control over the flow of time that surrounds you, allowing you to speed yourself and others up or decrease the flow of time for others. An enemy creature that uses a move action inside your quantum field takes a minus 5-foot status penalty to its speed during that action. You and your allies gain a 5-foot status bonus to speed when you use a move action inside your quantum field during those actions. So that's, again, another pretty powerful ability. If you've never played Pathfinder Starfinder before, you know that speed and being mobile on the battlefield is extremely important. And having those kind of penalties or bonuses to the enemies or your friends, your allies, is very important to the game and can be the clutch between getting, your Solarian getting to move right up to a threat, or your soldier getting into the ability to block someone else from coming in, allowing your operative to swing around for a flank, things like that. So again, a very, very powerful ability. I would be going probably anything in the arcane. I'm just an arcane fan. For me, I'd probably end up going with the Analyst. I think that to me is one of the more interesting ones. It also comes with the computer skill. And for me, that kind of character would be very interesting to play. Again, you have to see how it works, and we'll see more and more of these paradoxes come out over time. They may add more before the full release of the game, or you may see some in additional splat books. So your anchors are what keeps you centered, reminds you what's real, and otherwise helps counter the disoriented feeling caused by your paradoxes. When you interact with or think about your anchor, you might display a physical tick, speak a meaningful phrase, or mentally reorder your scattered thoughts. Select your anchor at first level. Your anchor grants you a certain benefit as an anchoring action. There's only 3 of these. Again, I can see this expanding a lot more as the game evolves and as they add more to it. So the first anchor is a core memory. Precious memories keep you connected to reality. These memories might involve your family, upbringing, etc. Your anchor benefit is you can access core memories from a small part of you that still exists in another reality. During daily preparations, you choose a skill you're trained in. You gain assurance in that skill. If you're an expert in that skill, the skill has the recall knowledge action, you gain the automatic knowledge in that skill. And What Assurance does is it gives you a 10 plus your proficiency modifier with no other negatives or bonuses to it. These are really good for things like your medicine skill for treating wounds. Athletics Assurance is actually a really strong one as well to be able to move around. Same thing with acrobatics for balancing, stuff like that. So those are pretty good. Having the recall knowledge, or you gain the automatic knowledge in that skill. Again, very solid ability. It's a pretty decently strong anchor. The ability you get is called Restorative Recollection. Now, Restorative Recollection is a once per round. It is anchoring, so if you use it, it'll sustain your quantum field if it's up. Despite being stunned, there's a part of your mind in another reality still processing your situation. Decrease your stun value by 2 or slowed value by 1. If you're already lost in action this turn due to that condition, you can recall knowledge with a skill you are trained in. So that's a pretty decent ability right there. As a focal point, the next anchor is called Focal Point. Basically, you intensely focus on a specific subject or idea to the point that other things fade into the background. Now, your benefit is your single-minded focus helps you concentrate. If a reaction would disrupt your spellcasting action, attempt a DC 15 flat check. If you succeed, your action isn't disrupted. So that's pretty good. Disrupted actions can happen during certain reactive strikes, certain other abilities that we went through in other classes. So even though they have a chance to disrupt you, you'd have a DC 15. It's a pretty high flat check, but it's better than nothing again. Your anchoring action is Intense Focus. Again, it is an anchoring, it has an anchoring tag, so it'll sustain your quantum field. Your focus becomes so intense that you can easily reassess your condition and surroundings. Reduce the value of clumsy condition by 1 or ignore the effects of the suppressed condition until the start of your next turn. And we went over the suppressed condition with the soldier. So if you don't know about that, hop on over that video, take a look at that, and you'll know what that is. The final anchor is Tangible Object. Basically, you carry something around with you, a fidget spinner, something that's sentimental. Maybe it's an old archaic watch. It basically helps you by touching it, quiet your mind. The anchoring benefit is the presence or weight of your chosen object helps ground you in this reality. You get a +1 circumstance bonus to both perception checks and will saves against illusions and holograms. When you come within 10 feet of an illusion or hologram that can be disbelieved, the GM rolls a secret check to see if you disbelieve it, even if you didn't spend an action to interact with the illusion or hologram. For illusions and stuff, you normally have to interact with them, and then you get to make a check. You have to actually use an action to do it. This way, the GM rolls a secret check. Basically, they just roll for you. They don't tell you it's going to happen, and off you go. It's a nice way that GMs can bring certain abilities like this into the game without the player being able to metagame it and know that they do know it or don't know it, or suddenly there was a dice roll for some reason. That always perks people's ears up, especially, draw a map out for players. They immediately think combat's going to happen. Your anchoring action is called Touch Something Real. You can do this once per round, and you have to have a free hand. Briefly touching or fidgeting with your anchor helps you evaluate your situation clearly. Decrease the value of your frightened or stupefied condition by. If you have none of these conditions, you instead gain a +1 circumstance bonus to will saves against fear effects until the start of your next turn. So out of the three, I think the tangible object one is probably going to be one of the weaker ones, just because how many times you're going to be going up against illusions and stuff. Even though you do get the will save, it's really, I think, very niche when it comes to it. That's probably one I wouldn't take. All right, let's take a look at some of the Witchwarper. All right, one of the first level ones I like was Quantum Pulse. It's a free action. You roll initiative. You're always ready to let loose with your paradoxical abilities and can create your field with a thought. As combat begins, you release a pulse of quantum energy, activating your quantum field as if you'd used warp reality. So this is a very common theme on many of the classes. If they have an ability, suppressing fire, stuff like that, that you get to do these when you roll initiative as a free action. I really do like that. Again, action economy in Starfinder and Pathfinder is extremely important because you only get 3 actions. And so having something remove the need to use an action during your first turn, to me, is always a solid option. Second level, I liked predictive positioning. Now you have to be a precog for this one. You can only do it once every 10 minutes, and a trigger is an enemy damages you. It is a reaction. So you react to danger by repositioning to a space you would occupy in a different reality, free from incoming danger. You gain resistance to all damage against the triggering attack equal to 2 plus your level. So 4 at second level. You instantly teleport up to your speed to an area within your quantum field. This movement doesn't trigger reactions based on movement and ignores hazards and terrain, but can't pass through walls or other solid objects. If you picked Quantum Pulse as your first level feat, this is a great second level feat to complement that, especially if you're going later in initiative. So you roll initiative, your quantum field goes up, you get hit before you can even move. You can do this predictive positioning and move yourself around and get yourself a little bit of damage resistance to the attack, which is really nice. At 4th level, I do like the reaction Quantum Cycle. It is a once per day though, so it is very limited. The trigger is you cast a 2nd rank or higher spell where the spell targets a creature or area within your quantum field. You expertly manipulate the effects of your quantum field to ensure that some of the energy from your spell is preserved and can be harnessed again. You regain an expended spell slot 1 rank lower than the triggering spell. Now, one of the things to note is because you need to have a 2nd rank or higher spell, you have to be 3rd level to use this at all. So at 4th level, this is a great one to kind of slot in there. I think it'll be more important in higher levels. And do remember that feats, you can pick anything lower than your level. So even if you're 12th level and you get the ability to pick a feat, you could come back and grab a 4th level one. That's not a big deal. So this is a very solid one, especially the ability to regain spell ranks lower than the triggering one is really, really, really good, especially when you only have X amount per day. So very, very solid feat. Now, Radiant Zone is one I actually don't think is as good a feat as you could pick for 4th level. The reality you conjure is much brighter than your own. The area of your quantum field becomes bright light. Creatures in your quantum field must attempt a fortitude save against your class DC. Creatures with light blindness treat the result as 1 step worse. So they can either be unaffected, dazzled. On a failure, they're blinder for 1 round, dazzled for 1 minute. Creatures can spend an interact action rubbing its eyes to end the blinded condition. Critical fail, the creature cannot use any action as well. To me, the reason this is kind of one of the weaker feats is fortitude saves are normally one of the strongest saves that I've seen NPCs and monsters have, and it uses your class DC, not your spellcasting DC. So that can change over time. Your spellcasting one will go up higher than your class one will at some points. So this can be a little bit worse of a feat. It's probably one I wouldn't pick. I think having the quantum recycling is way stronger than a Radiant Zone. At 6th level, I liked Quantum Transposition. It is a single action. You reposition your quantum field by slipping it through a crack in the fabric of reality to a new position within 100 feet. You can't use this feat if your quantum field is an emanation. So in other words, if you emanate it from yourself, you can't move yourself around. You're not allowed to. But this allows you to reposition your quantum field as a single action, which is really nice to be able to move that sucker around the field, especially if you're in a very large area and you find that the combat has moved away from it. It's a good way to be able just to kind of move it around with you. And especially 100 feet. That is a long, long range. Unless you're outdoors doing a lot of planet side combat and stuff, 100 feet is normally well beyond most of the maps you're going to be using, most of the scope of the games. Everything is normally within maybe 40, 50 feet type idea. So being able to move this sucker around, I think is an extremely strong feat. At 8th level, I like the single action Quantum Entanglement. Again, it has the anchoring trait as well, which is nice because it's going to sustain your quantum field. You prevent creatures from leaving your quantum field and returning to reality until the start of your next turn. Any creature who begins their turn inside your quantum field must succeed a will saving throw against your Witchwarper class DC to move outside your quantum field. On a failure, the action is disrupted. A creature who succeeds at this save is immune to your entanglement for 24 hours. But again, this is a good aerial denial ability. If you need to make sure something is stuck where it's going to be, you want your Solarian and your soldier to be able to get in there, etc., etc. This is an extremely strong single action that sustains your quantum field as well. So again, really solid at 8th level. At 10th level, I really liked Shift Energy. You draw in magical energy from another reality to infuse it into a spell you cast in this reality. If the next action you use is to cast a spell that deals damage, the spell instead deals a different type of damage determined by rolling a d6 as detailed in the table below. The result of this type of damage is already dealt by the spell. Roll again until you get a different result. This applies to all the damage the spell deals, including persistent damage and damage caused by an ongoing effect of the spell, such as damage caused by the corrosive haze. A creature's immunities are unaffected. But basically you roll a d6 and it either turns into acid, cold, fire, electricity, void, or sonic. The reason I like this one is, one, it helps if you have prepped a whole bunch of fire spells, let's say, and you know that the creature you're going up against is immune to fire. You'll be able to change it to something else. It'll be something different than fire because, again, if you roll fire, it just changes something else. I love the randomness of it. It almost is akin to wild magic, so that's kind of fun. And it'd be interesting to see, your fireball suddenly become a sonic ball or an acid ball. I think those would be really neat to see that sort of effect. I think this one's pretty nifty at 10th level. At 12th level, I liked In Another Life. It is just a basic feat. It doesn't have any other tags to it. When you rest, you see visions of yourself and other realities during your daily preparations. Select one Ancestry feat from your Ancestry that you meet prerequisites for that you don't have already. You gain that feat until your next daily preparations. This, again, is a really strong feat, and this allows you to gain that feat. You don't lose any of your feats doing this. You just gain an additional feat, and you get to choose which one it is. So during daily preparation, it's really nice if you're going planet side, you're going into a certain area or whatever, and you want something that would be more effective to you or better for your group to have. This is something that was really, really niche, and I love this one. Now, it doesn't state it in this, but other feats that allow you to use Ancestry feats and other skills, learn the skills, you never ever can use those as a prerequisite for other feats. So you don't get to every day choose a single feat so that you qualify for a different feat in that Ancestry tree. That doesn't work that way. It doesn't state it in this, but the way the rest of the rules work, it is definitely something that I would enforce on my table. At 14th level, I liked Borrow Spell. I'm a big fan of free actions. It is a once per day ability though. The triggers you use an action which sustains your quantum field, and the quantum field is still active. So reaching across time and space, you can borrow a spell from a version of yourself in another reality. During this turn, you cast one spell without spending a spell slot to do so. The spell must be in your repertoire, at least one rank lower than your highest ranked Witchwarper spell slot. So again, it just adds a lot more flexibility to your character. I like things that allow you to do a little bit extra. It's not super overpowered. So I do really like this one. Again, as a free action, I think it's just a really solid choice at 14th level. The other one I really liked at 14th level, even though it is a 2-action ability, is Persistent Quantum Field. So it's once per day. By spending more time to manifest, you can create a stable quantum field. This functions as a warp reality with a duration of 1 minute. No longer do you have to worry about abilities that help sustain it. This thing is just going to last for 1 minute. You'll be able to move it around with the other abilities, et cetera, et cetera. It just stays around. And again, another really solid 14th level feat. Now I kind of skipped over the 16th level feats, mostly because I would honestly rather take the second 14th level feat than any of the 16th level ones. You can read over them if you wish, but there's not really anything that really caught my eye at 16th level. I would rather both the Persistent Quantum Field and the Borrow Spell off 14th level than take something at 16th. At 18th level, I liked Complete Transposition. So it is anchoring, and you have to have Quantum Transposition as a prerequisite. So again, these all build on each other. When you use Quantum Transposition to move your quantum field, you can teleport any number of creatures within the quantum field's original area to squares of your choice in its new area. You also teleport any items they're wearing or holding. Your Quantum Transposition action gains a teleport trait. Each target may attempt a will saving throw against your Witchwarper class DC. Targets who succeed are unaffected. So yes, you could pick up the entire group of bad guys and dump them into liquid hot magma, but they would get a will save for it. If you're moving your friends, they can just go with you, and you can really reposition the entire battlefield on this one. I think that one is really neat. It is a will saving throw against the Witchwarper DC, so not as strong as your spellcasting DC, but at 18th level, you're going to have a high DC anyway, so it's a good one to have. Will is normally, I think, one of the least used saving throws for monsters. Now, I could be 100% wrong. I haven't seen a giant list of monsters from Starfinder, so they may have a lot more will saving throws than normal, but most things you're going to be fighting likely are going to have either a higher fortitude or higher reflex save. Will's usually the one, unless they are a caster of some sort or a face character or NPC. So that is a pretty solid ability. At 20th level, I like both. Quantum Negation, you expose a target to reality which they don't exist. You learn the Quantum Negation Warp spell, which is something I won't be covering. I'm not going to be going into the spells in this. Quantum Research, you become a true embodiment of your paradox and surpass what mortals can achieve. You gain the 10th rank spell slot. There's the only one way to gain 10th rank spell slots, and that's through feats or very special abilities. You don't just get them. Now, for the Witchwarper, really solid classes would be an android because they get Dex and Int as a boost. The Yosoki, they also get a Dex Intellect boost. And remember, anything that, as long as it doesn't have the Int penalty, should be good. If you have something that has a free boost in it as well, and you want to boost the Int as well, those will all be strong choices. Just naturally, your android and your Yosoki both have those Int bumps. So those are the ones that are pretty good. But anything else that, again, if it doesn't have the flaw to your intellect, is going to be a solid choice for this class. I think it'd be really interesting to have an android that is from another time, or, you know, from a different alternate reality. And I think that's really neat. I think it's very interesting. You can have a lot of fun flavor with mixing and matching this. But that is a wrap for me on the Starfinder playtest class of the Witchwarper. So again, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and just kind of a little bit extended long video. And I would like to know what you think about the Witchwarper. Do you think that it's something you would play? It's not really something I would be gravitating towards, no pun intended. I still think for me, it would be either an operative or a Solarian would probably be my number 1 and 2 choices. And then the Witchwarper would probably be lower on the list. So for me, even though I love my arcane spells or my occult spells, having a spellcaster, this one isn't really my cup of tea. I think they need to add a few more anchors. They definitely need to add a few more paradoxes to make this really kind of polished. And I can see that happening before the game is released. So we'll have to see what Paizo's going to do. What do you think are the strengths of this class? What do you think are the weaknesses of the class? I think I went over that enough, so you don't need to hear from me anymore about it, but I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. But that is it for me today, and thank you all for watching the series on Starfinder. We will be running a Starfinder playtest coming up on Twitch and on YouTube in a couple of weeks, so hopefully we'll see you on there. Now, if you're enjoying the content, it'd be great for my channel if you would hit that like and subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications on new videos, even share it. Putting a comment down below is a great way to engage with the YouTube algorithm, even if it is your favorite Starfinder emoji. But that's it for me today. In the meantime, and in between time, thank you all for hanging out with me, and may all your games be full of myth, mirth, and magic.